Kaduna State government confirms killing of 3 worshippers as terrorists attacked 2 churches in Kajuru local government area.
President Muhammadu Buhari congratulates governor-elect of Ekiti State.
Fathers enjoined to be steadfast in fulfilling societal roles.
Are expected to create atmosphere of love, all within the context of remembering that they are the source and the support for society.
And good morning, Nigeria. Today we shall review the just concluded Ekiti governorship election.
Now, the much-awaited Ekiti governorship election has not only come and gone, it has been won and lost already. It is now history and a reference point in the politics of Ekiti State and the electoral process in Nigeria at large.
That's right, Nadabo. Now, it was more like a 3-horse race, but as it turned out, a particular horse left the others trailing at a great distance to win the race, and that is Abiodun Oyebanji of the All Progressives Congress, APC, who polled over 187,000 votes to defeat his closest rival, Engineer Segun Oni of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, who scored 82,000 votes and some fraction. Now, Nadabo, those were the first and second positions in the race. So 187,000 and then 82,000 votes.
211, that is for the runner-up as such.
That's right.
And trailing that is both the winner, Kinsley, and the first runner-up was BC Kolaole of the PDP, who polled 67,457 votes to come third in the race, while the only woman out of the 16 candidates, Kemi Elebute Hale of the Action Democratic Party, ADP, emerged fourth in the race with 3,495 votes.
Indeed, Nadabo. Now, if the account of election observers and monitors, as well as the candidates themselves who describe the polls as peaceful and seamless, are anything to go by, the Ekiti governorship election has gone down in history as another off-season attempt at deepening or perfecting, as it were, the electoral process in Nigeria. Now, it was also a litmus test for the Electoral Act 2022, which provides, among other things, for the electronic transmission of results by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC.
And that appears to now be a game changer for elections in Nigeria, as we are beginning to witness fewer skirmishes and little or no need for violence and ballot box snatching, as revealed in the Ekiti polls. Unlike in many previous elections, Kinsley, when there was no electronic transmission of results, in the opinion of observers, the election was without much security threats, but for the challenge of vote buying.
Yeah, that was a particular menace on Saturday in Adabo. Now, a particular case of fighting or chaos in the Ekiti governorship election reportedly occurred in a polling unit in Ado Ekiti, where voters were said to have resisted an attempt by a syndicate to buy votes by inducing voters, which is an electoral offense known as see and buy. And Ekiti, even in just concluded polls, has become a household name for see and buy.
And we were also made to understand really that operators of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, busted some see and buy syndicates who tried to induce some voters in Ekiti. It remains to be seen, therefore, whether those arrested will be prosecuted and made to face the weight of the law if indeed they are found guilty of the crime.
Now, another point to note is that the election in Ekiti was the enthusiasm of the voters. Now, this included the participation of very senior citizens. There's a person in their 70s and 80s. There's a centenarian, a woman over 100 years who participated in the election. A number of them defied the heavy downpour in some areas to cast their vote and waited patiently to ensure that their votes were counted and then the results transmitted electronically.
Great enthusiasm there, really. And then, however, a greater percentage of eligible voters stayed away from the election, as INEC estimated the percentage of turnout for the election that is about 37%, with more that 300 and more than 363,000, I must say, voters accredited on election day, out of more than 989,000 registered voters.
Well, that's voter apathy is still a major issue between elections in our country. And from the statistics of Saturday Post released by INEC, of the more than 360,000 votes cast by the electorate, over 8,000 of those votes were rejected and voided. Now, this says a lot also about voter education and poor knowledge of proper thumbprinting, and perhaps the names and logos of the 16 political parties that participated in the Ekiti polls.
And these are some of the issues really our guests will speak to as we review the Ekiti governorship election on today's episode of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the NTA. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yusuf Nedabo.
Kingsley Osadola. I joined Yusuf Nadabo to also welcome you to the program. As always, we are live from our headquarters studios in Abuja, here, the nation's capital. In the course of the program, we have our complimentary segments, and these include business and newspaper review. For now, here is Tessie Omeri, who has the highlights of the morning news. I was only to test the mic this morning, so I would have said Tessie tested the mic. Good morning, Tessie.
And indeed, Tessie has tested the mic. Good morning, Kingsley Nadabu, and happy Father's Day, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Nadabu, that's a lovely one.
Yes.
Yes. Otherwise, I mean, assuming it was the other way around, but this morning, that's what we would have been discussing.
Yeah.
We would have shifted the Kitty election to Tuesday, so that we can focus on.
She could have laid much emphasis on the women if it were to be the other way.
That's right, because persons congratulated us.
No, I'm not be biased.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Happy Father's Day
Thank
for
you.
your great role. Hello, Nigerians, and good morning to the morning news. Kaduna State Government has confirmed killing of 3 worshippers attacked by bandits in Kajuru local government area. Bandits stormed some villages on motorcycles and attacked worshippers in Maranatha Baptist and St. Moses Catholic churches, killing 3 people and injured 2. The state government in a statement said already armed security personnel have been drafted to the affected areas to hunt the bandits. While commiserating with victims, the state deputy governor Hadiza Savwa Balarabi condemned the attack, describing it as barbaric and pure injustice. She appealed for calm as government is doing everything possible to restore security of lives and property in the state. President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated Biodun Oyebanji, candidate of the All Progressives Congress APC, as he is declared governor-elect in Saturday's Ekiti State governorship election. In a statement by Femi Adesina, his special advisor on media and publicity, the president says the victory is well-deserved, considering Oyebanji's contributions to the development of the state and the party, urging him, however, to be magnanimous in victory in the interests of the people of the state. In the same vein, President of the Senate Analaran also congratulates Biodun Oyebanji on his victory in the Ekiti State governorship election. Senator Lawan also congratulates the APC both at the state and national levels and the people of Ekiti on the peaceful and successful conduct of the poll and also for making the right choice. Similarly, the All Progressives Congress congratulates and profoundly appreciates the people of Ekiti State for reaffirming their confidence in the party by rallying round the governor-elect, Biodun Oyebanji. Meanwhile, Ekiti State Governor-elect Biodun Oyebanji of the All Progressives Congress APC has pledged extensive consultations, including invitation to his co-contestants in his quest to sustain development in the state. He made the announcement during his acceptance speech, following his declaration as winner of Saturday's governorship election by the Independent National Electoral Commission.
We will continue our consultation to seek more input into our blueprint for the state, and will, in the coming days, open formal channels through which you can send suggestions to us. We want to continue to listen to you and engage in.
And away from Ekiti governorship election, trade ministers from member countries of the World Trade Organization have adopted 10 decisions and declarations at the just concluded 12th Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization at Geneva, Switzerland. The Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Mayemi Yaruwaji Katugum, who led the Nigerian delegation, commanded the Director General of the WTO, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, on the structured modalities of successions, which provided a constructive way of engagement on the WTO response to the pandemic, food crisis, fisheries subsidies, agricultural reforms, and general reforms. And following months of epileptic power supply in Abuja and environs, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company ADC says it is embarking on 40 quick win projects aimed at rehabilitating its network to improve power supply. In a statement, its managing director Adeoye Fadeibi says the projects currently ongoing include deloading the overloaded feeders, acquiring of new distribution transformers, and repair of 78 existing ones. This is in addition to ongoing major maintenance on its 44 power transformers. The ADC acknowledged the persistent electricity supply in Abuja and environs, but appeals to electricity consumers to be patient. Fathers in the nation have been tasked on standing responsibly by their families to enhance security for growth and development. This was the message from the clergy as churches in the Federal Capital Territory observed Father's Day on Sunday, joining the global celebration of those God has ordained to represent Him in various homes.
Fathers are expected to create atmosphere of love, do all within the context of remembering that they are the source and the support for society.
Insecurity in the society today, and a lot of untoward behavior simply because the father is absent.
It's as if we are losing the core value of a true father. A true father will not discriminate over any of his children. Fathers are to be role models unto their children.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Medabo and Kingsley after this break. Have a beautiful week.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Nigeria has been urged to take advantage of Indonesia's palm oil export ban to expand its market share of the product. That's Nigerian Alika Opanachi Arua for details of this news.
Recently, Indonesian President Joko announced a total export ban on all palm oil, both crude, refined and processed, out of the country to tackle local price hikes. Already, the ban is soaring cooking oil prices even higher worldwide, aggravating global food security fears amid adverse weather and the war in Ukraine. Analysts said Indonesia's palm oil export ban has left the door open for Nigeria to expand its market share and reap higher export profits if appropriate measures are put in place.
For us, when we talk about palm oil, It's even supposed to be one of the things that should be a revenue generating business for Nigeria, because we move from Lagos to the Benin to Edo, you see a very long stretch of palm oil, and they're wasting. So the government is focusing on agric now. That is the focus of Nigerian government. So, and I believe for palm oil, not just even the palm oil alone, the good thing about this palm is that a lot of byproducts, even outside of the palm oil, the kernels, the oil, there's hardly anything. That's one of the trees we call wonder tree. There's hardly anything on that tree that is not economically viable. So it's about time.
Global palm oil prices have soared in recent months, with other vegetable oils, including sunflower and soy, on similar trajectories, driving the UN Food and Agriculture Organization's Vegetable Oil Price Index to a record high in February, a peak that's continued to rise. With business news, Alika Opanachi, Arua.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business package, and good morning, Nigeria. Up next is newspaper review.
And as usual, Bayo Atebe is in the house here. We couldn't have him, last week, but Bayo had been
of weeks. Good morning.
a little bit someone indisposed, someone sick, I was told. How are you feeling now?
Fit as a fiddle.
Fit.
Good morning. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Nigeria.
And let's now get started with the papers we have. We have two papers only today. Have the Nation and what's that one? Kinsley?
Yeah, I have the Punch newspaper.
The Punch newspaper. So let's go through the Nation newspaper for a start. Can we have the Nation newspaper? Please see the headlines or the stories on the front page there. All right. Now, at the top of the masthead, we have around 3 stories. Main ones as such were really windows. Terrorists killed 3 in attack on 2 churches. That was on page 6. And then bandits killed 3 in Igbo, 13 mourners abducted in Edo. On page 5, Rivers, government files charges against America and others. And on page 5 still we have this story. NUT president among 2,357 teachers sacked by Kaduna State government. NUT president among 2,357 teachers sacked by Kaduna State government. Now coming down a little down to the center of the page, the big story here is ripples over Okowa's nomination widen in PDP. This story is on page 4. And the writer there is pressure mounts on Ayu to step down. Atiku off to Dubai to rest. It comes out. But before this story, a little bit above it, there are 2 stories, and these include Hadijan Guru Road inaugurated in Jigawa on page 27, and still on page 27, FCT needs more school zones. Now moving down the page, a huge crowd gives Tinubu Rosen welcome to Lagos, with the rider there Uzodinma, Ganduje, Buni, Shetima, others on trip with APC candidate. The photo picture is just that, as you can see. Tinubu there with the broom acknowledging cheers from the crowd. Now moving down a little, Oyebanji promises new Ekiti Dawn. Now new Dawn that is in Ekiti or new Ekiti Dawn, whichever it is. It all says that there's going to be new Ekiti State according to the governor-elect. And the riders are, victory symbolizes acceptance of APC, says Buhari, Akeredolu, Oyetola, and Adamu. The other rider is PDP candidate congratulates Suwuna, and the SDP's only to challenge results in court. Details of that on page 5. The right hand side, we have prices of goods will rise further. Experts predict. Details of that on page 5. This page is really loaded with good stories and very interesting ones for that matter. At the foot of the page, there are 2 stories. Naira sells at 606 Naira per dollar on page 17, and finally on page 7, Benue youths fold LP APC governorship primaries. Now, these are the stories we have on the Nation newspaper.
All right, so let's take a look at the front page of the Punch. Above the nameplate, as always, you have a very busy front page there. Debt servicing doubles, hits 896 billion naira in 3 months. Debt servicing doubles, hits 896 billion naira in 3 months. This is according to the Debt Management Office. Details of that story you find on page 30. Foreign airlines kick as federal government blocks $450 million ticket revenue. 6 IOCs remit unpaid 386.4 billion naira proceeds this month. That's attributed to the NNPC. IOCs stands for International Oil Corporations. People are tired of Lawan. Let him go and rest. As Machina Yobe politician. You have details of that story on page 9. Lawan is the incumbent president of the Senate. He also contested the presidential primaries of the APC, where he lost. And Machina is the gentleman who won the APC primaries for the Yobe senatorial district. We understand his name has been replaced. That's a story that was circulated at the weekend, replaced with that of Ahmed Lawan. There are all kinds of legal issues arising from that. People are tired of Lawan. Let him go and rest once again. That's according to Machina, Yobe politician, who says he will not give up that seat or the ticket. Now, stock investors lose 776 billion naira in 1 week. That's a bloodbath on the exchange. Federal government, World Bank, AFD to fix over 50,000 kilometers of rural roads with $575 million. Ekiti governorship election, APC and PDP clash over vote buying, and Onig camp malls legal action. PDP came distant third and desperate to bring back Reunion's regime, says APC. That's one of the riders. Now, the other one says APC pauperized Nigerians. Electorate find it difficult to make rational decisions. That's a claim by the PDP. Election fraught with violence, and we will challenge it at tribunal. That's SDP coalition agent. Now, the photographs there on the front page have the caption, Tinubu returns to Lagos, 6 massive local government votes, and hoodlums attack convoy. Now, the hoodlums that attacked the convoy yesterday, that was at the palace of the Oba of Lagos at Idugora on Lagos Island. And there's also stories that trended on the social media, videos of traffic lockdown in Lagos along the airport route, that's to say from the airport through the international airport road and then through the Papa Expressway, just to allow the convoy of Asiwaju Tinubu and others who were with him to pass. 3,904 to perform Hajj from Sokoto and Kwara. Police bust Kano impostor, blackmailing Facebook lovers with news. NUT fumes as Kaduna sacks union boss and other teachers. Dadabo already read that. Yeah. Terrorists killed 3 in Kaduna churches attacks, and Khan and Sukapu mourn. Kidnappers demand 150 million naira for ex-NFF officials abducted after Abuja wedding. They were returning to Bauchi after the wedding took place last Saturday, and they were said to have been kidnapped in a village somewhere in Nasarawa State around about 7:30 p.m. Killing field. Benue Valley becomes gunmen's haven. 92 residents killed in 3 months. Ayo.
Thank you, Kins. Let's start with the story coming from Ekiti. Abayomi Ibanji of the All Progressive Congress had pulled 187,057 votes to emerge the governor-elect of Ekiti State. He beat Olufemi Oni of SDP, who registered 82,211 votes for SDP, while BC Kolawole of the People's Democratic Party polled 67,457 votes to return third. The returning officer for the election was the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ibadan. President Muhammad Buhari has already congratulated the governor-elect, the national chairman of the All Progressive Congress, as well as the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum. There were a good turnout of voters very early, and also security agents and INEC officials also reported to their polling booths very early. And the BVAS technology was said to have performed creditably well with a few glitches which were also overcome. Election observers noted that there was considerable improvement over the Anambra and the FCT last elections compared to what transpired on Saturday. There were instances of vote hawking, people who were selling votes and those who were buying, but the law caught up with them. EFCC is reported to have arrested 15 of such persons. By virtue of the amended Electoral Act, vote buying is a serious offense, and those now will have to face the wrath of the law. The People's Democratic Party candidate, Bisi Kolaole, has already written a letter to congratulate the governor-elect. He also sent another thanking the people of Ekiti State. 16 political parties contested in the election. There's that report in the Punch which has observed that Nigeria's debt servicing bill has increased by 109%. As at last year, December, it stood at 429 billion as December 2021, and currently at March, it is already at 896.56 billion. The report is quoting the Debt Management Office as indicating that 2.93 trillion was spent on debt servicing in the year 2021. By January to March this year alone, we already scaled 896 billion, which is very, very alarming. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning recently expressed concern that fuel subsidy regime is hurting Nigeria's ability to service her debts. Speaking at a World Bank development program, Zainab Ahmed says that we are struggling with debt servicing. Though revenue is increasing, unfortunately expenditure has also been increasing at a much higher rate. So it is a very difficult situation. The IMF has advised that unless something is done seriously, debt servicing could go up 60% of federal government revenue by the year 2026. Now, there was that story you read about Kaduna State where some teachers were sacked.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, the figure that is given is that 2,357 teachers have been sacked who failed the competence test. The Kaduna State Subeb had actually conducted a test, and 165 teachers failed, but 2,192, including the president of the National Union of National Teachers Union, refused to take the test. So they were deemed as having failed, and they stand sacked. Okay. Don't forget that Kaduna State has periodically been doing this testing. You will recall that in 2021 it was 165 of the 27,622 who sat for the test were sacked for poor performance. But in the year 2018, 21,780 failed the test. They were sacked. Immediately after, 25,000 other teachers who had gone through rigorous tests were employed to replace them. So, in fact, there was more teachers than those that were sacked.
Well, it may sound negative, really, to some other people, Bayo and Kinsley, talking about the sacking and the rest of them, people's livelihood. But looking at the spirit and reason behind it, one can really say the steps taken by Kaduna State government in trying to purge the educational system of, unqualified or low-standard teachers is a good one, given the fact that, education is the key. Starting from that level, primary education, That's why you catch the young and then get them through. And when they don't have really good teachers, good mentors, and those to put them through adequately and appropriately, there will be some problems. I think it's we can see the benefit for now. There are going to be comments and then, serious rejection of this. But there will be some 10, 20 years to come when the fruits start.
In November 2021, they found out that 233 teachers had fake certificates. So they were dispensed with.
Yeah. I think that the arguments are fairly clear. Just one or 2 points, because we're out of time actually for the newspaper review. What we have at the moment governing elections in Nigeria is the Electoral Act 2022. The Electoral Act 2022 has not been amended. There's a proposal to amend it. If you recall, the Senate and the House of Reps rushed through his chambers amendment to Section 84, subsection 8. The President withheld his assent, and he still has not acceded to it. The House of Reps that day threatened to override the President's veto. So what we have is the Electoral Act 2022. We also have, of course, the electoral guidelines issued by INEC and then the relevant provisions in the Constitution. So the proper reference to it would be Electoral Act 2022. What was amended was the old act, which of course is no longer law. The other issue is not here on the front pages of the papers, and we are here in Abuja, and those who are in Abuja, and perhaps others who live in other parts of the country, will be witnesses to the epileptic power supply that we have witnessed this year. I mean, I haven't seen anything like it for the years that we have had the privatization and so on and so forth. Now, AEDC is saying they are going to fix their distribution equipment and all that. One question that arises, in my opinion, if you recall, a couple of years ago, when they were thinking of increasing tariff, which they now increase, almost at will, they were talking about cost-reflective tariff, and at some point they were also talking about the number of hours for which you get service. That will now be the billing, that will now be the basis of the billing. So for those who were categorized under regular power service, and you have been buying electricity or even buying darkness for that period, what happens? I mean, you 20,000 that would have given you like 786 units in the past, now gives you half of that. That's about 383 units here in Abuja. And what you are buying, you go to some of their AADC offices, they don't even have light.
Yes.
So you are spending that money. Are the consumers being cheated? Because if you say that the basis of the tariff was the number of hours for which you get electricity per day, and you have not been getting electricity for those number of hours, what happens?
But that's usually that's for AEDC anyway. That's their own initiative, giving the full solution, full-way solution, full project solution to their power scarcity in FCT and some other places where they have authority.
I don't know what you are saying. Is it? Are you saying the tariff structure? The tariff structure.
No, I'm talking about the projects which have been preferred in order to tackle the scarcity of power in the FCT.
That's what I'm talking about. Saying, look, how consumers are being cheated in the absence of regular power supply.
Yes.
If you said that I'm going to buy light credit because I will get 16 hours of electricity per day, and that is the basis for that tariff, and I'm getting less than 3 hours of electricity per day, and it's been going on for several months, how do you continue to justify the current tariff structure?
And that's only one aspect of this case. We have this for those here. I mean, when you look to other states,
we have had our 17th national grid failure, which foisted blackout throughout the country.
So I'm talking about this issue you're raising, or only other states like in Adamawa.
Well, part of it, because
you have this issue of meeting.
He's talking about the number of hours of power you have had.
Yeah.
When there is a national grid collapse, everywhere is a blackout.
The practice is all over, the negative one, really.
Yeah,
and I think authorities should look into that very well. There could be another topic for, Good Morning Nigeria, because we need to look at that very well. Yeah. In the meantime, we're really out of time. But thank you so much for attending to our guest time, really. They're already around. So you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll now take a break and continue with our discussion on the review of the Ekiti governorship election. Stay with us, please. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And to begin our conversation on reviewing the Ekiti governorship election, let's take this background report by correspondent Oyeyemi Ajayi.
The much anticipated Ekiti State governorship election has come and gone. The off-season election was a litmus test for the Electoral Act 2022 as amended. The election was adjudged by many to be generally free and fair as accreditation and voting commenced early enough in many parts of the states. Voters came out in their numbers to exercise their franchise, and they also waited for their votes to be counted. It was a keenly contested election for the candidates of the 16 political parties, with months of intense campaigns, but at the end, Biodu Oyebanji of the All Progressives Congress (APC) was declared winner by the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). As announced by INEC's returning officer for the election, Professor Kayode Adebowale, the APC candidate polled 187,057 votes against Segun Oni of SDP, who had 82,211 votes, while Bisi Kolaole of the PDP garnered 67,457 votes. However, Kemi Elebute Hale, the candidate for the Action Democratic Party (ADP), who came fourth in the election, had rejected the results, citing snatching of ballot boxes, vote buying and harassment of the party members, with the claim that some of her supporters were attacked. Now, with the Ekiti off-cycle election, can it be said that the Electoral Act passed the litmus test as envisaged? What needs to be done to strengthen the electoral process ahead of the next governorship election in Osun State? These are some questions our guests will be answering shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. Now, just to restate, because I said this while we were having a newspaper review a moment ago, what we have at the moment is Electoral Act 2022. Full stop. Electoral Act 2022 is not referred to as an amendment or otherwise. So it's not been amended. The process of seeking to amend it hasn't been concluded. So the proper reference is Electoral Act 2022. All right, once again, Oyemi Ajayi, thanks a lot for that background. With us in the studios to discuss issues arising from the Ekiti governorship election of last Saturday, let's welcome the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman, that's Mr. Rotimi Oyekomi. Rotimi, delight to have you on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Also here with us in the studios is the media team lead for CDD Election Analysis Center, Amsfree Ajanaku. And Amsfree Ajanaku, pleasure to have you on the program.
A pleasure to be here.
And by the way, CDD stands for Center for Democracy and Development.
All right, and we have also in the studio to talk on this, talk to this, very topic, Ewe Amakri, Program Director, Gender and Election Workshop of the Nigerian Women Trust Fund. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. And joining us via Zoom from Ado Ekiti is our regular here, Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information Strategy at Adamawa State, who is also an election observer. He's been there since, and he's still there. I think it's good we start with him since he's still on the ground right there. Let's get started, Ahmed Sajo. Let's see what's really happening. The elections have come and gone. Winners of March, losers have, really emerged too. And of course, it's a victory for all, I must say. What's your assessment so far, given the fact that you're still there? How was it been before, now, and then? I mean, before, during, of course, now.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. My general assessment is that this election is first in many ways. First, to be conducted under the new Electoral Act 2022, and it's also the first to witness quite a number of innovations from INEC and from Yaga Africa and Channels Television. It's the first election where results are posted online on a portal that you could access. So the citizens have one of the biggest advantages in this election, that they could, follow the election results polling unit by polling unit. As late as last night, we were doing some analysis here, and we were wondering whether it will be possible to do that on a national scale. But if it is, I think it's something that is very, very good. One very interesting thing about this election is that before the election started, because some of us were here for almost a week, there were a lot of apprehensions, there were a lot of fear that there will be some violence and there will be some breach of peace. But everything happened very peacefully. The leadership of the state and the leadership of INEC must be commended because the sensitization that took place was very massive. And then the security agencies acted very professionally as far as our observations are concerned, at least on the field, the days before and days, even as at yesterday, the conduct of the security agencies were very professional. Everybody did what they could do very well. So we were expecting that the elections could go smoothly without violence, and it went smoothly without violence, though I understand that at the by-election for the State House of Assembly, there was some little skirmish, which is very unfortunate and regrettable, but by and large, the election was peaceful. And the outcome was, though the voter turnout was a little bit lower than 2018, I understand that the voter turnout in 2018 was about 40%, but this time around we have in the region of 37%. I think it's a little bit lower. And with all the hype about people collecting their PVCs and people being interested in going out there to vote, we were hoping that the voter turnout would be a little bit higher than what it was in 2018, but I think it's a little bit lower. One very interesting thing about this election, and one must always speak about it, is that the senior citizens took particular interest in this election. And I could see in the media that they captured some real old women that went and cast their vote and were dancing. There were a lot of senior citizens in this election. Many of them came out in mass to go and vote. And we also saw that there were a lot of women that came out to vote. Women constituted a very large number. We are still aggregating based on gender, but I believe that the participation of women and the participation of elderly persons is worth commending. By and large, the most important thing is that we must commend INEC this time around. Even though there were one or two reports, I was at the situation room, and there were one or two reports of the beavers not functioning properly, but those reports were addressed instantly. And somehow the citizens realized that for the biometrics, if you put a little powder on the finger, the thing just works magic. So I think even the citizens were a little bit innovative. Where the beavers refused to read the biometrics, they just put a little powder on the finger and the thing just works. Somehow I also realized that sometimes in a hurry, when the beavers get 2 or 3 people at the same time, after 1 or 2 or 3 people, it will begin to show some strength or something that affects it. But when you wipe the beavers and then the next person puts his finger, it captures. So every other thing that INEC was supposed to do, they did. And then the distribution of materials was nearly seamless. We've just realized that putting the materials in the central bank and with all the wahala, was not even in the beginning of a seamless process. So putting it in their offices and then having control over the distribution from beginning to end was itself also an added advantage.
Okay, Ahmed Sajo, thanks a lot. We will return to you in the course of the conversation, and we will hope that the bandwidth will remain strong for the remainder of the conversation. Now back to the studios. Rotimi Oyekome, who is Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman. Of course, you listen to one of the election observers. What's INEC's own self-assessment of the election?
Thank you very much. We are quite pleased with what has happened so far. We prepared very hard for this election. We started by releasing the timetable a year ahead, and then we consulted widely with stakeholders, the political parties, civil society, and just before the election, the INEC chairman went to Ekiti with a team and met with traditional rulers, religious leaders, and other important stakeholders, security agents. And I think that what we saw on Saturday is what we call the amalgamation of cooperation among all stakeholders. And we've always said it, that when stakeholders cooperate with the commission, we will have a seamless exercise like we did on Saturday. And I think that the glory should go to all Nigerians, because this is about them. We trained our ad hoc staff. We made sure they deployed in good time. Most of the polling units were opened between 7:30 and 8, and people came out in their numbers, like the gentleman rightly observed, to cast their ballot. And some of the things we observed, report was that in some instances, the elderly people, the fingerprint had some issues, but once they put the beavers on their faces and ask them to smile, the thing will just accredit them. So I think we had a very good experience, but it is not for us to rest on our oars, because we still have Osun governorship election coming up in about a month's time. So we will take the reports of the observers. We will take reports from our field electoral officers and all those who participated, and make sure that we improve in wherever we had glitches or we had some problems for the next election.
Well, thank you so much, Rotimi Oyekami. Let's hear from Ansfree or Nomo Ajanako. Let's hear from you and then hear exactly what you saw, as it were. What really happened at Ado Ekiti? What's your assessment of the election?
So from the CDD Analysis Center, Election Analysis Center, we deployed 205 observers in Ekiti State, and we also set up a fake news hub because fake news has a lot of impact on the electoral process. So we were able to track fake news trending on election day, and also debunk the fake news to ensure that it doesn't undermine voter confidence and the participation of voter. But beyond that, talking about the successes, we are really thrilled and very impressed with the way technology worked in this election. Because if you look at past election, part of the niggling issue, some of the hitches we always had was the fact that the technology did not live up to the billing. But in this election, we were able to record, for instance, that the average time within which the beavers accredited the voter was between 2.4 minutes, and the latest was around 4 minutes. So for us, that was a massive boost, because if the technology delays the process, voters get frustrated, and you may not have that level of enthusiasm you want to see in terms of voters coming out to cast their ballots. But beyond that, the question of voter turnout should also be placed in the proper context, and this is the context of the last governorship election in Anambra, where the voter turnout was around 10.27%. So if you are moving from 10.27% in Anambra, which even had over 2 million registered voters, and you're talking about Ekiti with just over 900,000 voters, and you are doing 36.7% in terms of the voter turnout, that is massive for us. That shows that Ekiti is really a shot in the arm as we look at Osun and also project towards the 2023 elections. So for us, we are really very impressed, and we are in the mood of cautious optimism, because we want to be optimistic, but we also don't want to see a regression from the monumental achievements that INEC and other stakeholders have, recorded in the electoral process. Another very fundamental point we noted in the election is the fact that, unlike in the past, where anomalies like vote buying, it just went on without a response from the relevant agencies in Ekiti, we are really impressed that the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission provided a factor of deterrence in terms of looking at vote buying. So they went after perpetrators, those who were involved, and at least for one of the very few times we'll be seeing culprits, those involved in vote buying, being used to show an example that this is really something that is not acceptable in the electoral process. So by and large, it was a great outing for INEC. It was a great outing for other stakeholders, and CDD wants to also recommend, as we have recommended in our preliminary statements, that this synergy, this collaboration between INEC, security, civil society, even the media should continue going forward, and we should see better elections and the consolidation of our democracy.
All right, thank you very much. I'm free, Ajanaku. There are a number of issues that you have raised, and of course we will interrogate them in the course of this. Let's also bring in Area Makri, who is Program Director of Gender and Election Watchroom of the Nigerian Women Trust Fund. What is your organization's assessment of the Ekiti polls?
In one word, we will say it was largely peaceful. We want to commend the women of Ekiti State. They were, from our observation, because we deployed over 50 accredited observers and other citizen observers, and then of course we had hotlines where people were feeding us with information. The women were the first to be at the polls. Some were there from our observations as early as 6:45, and they reported that some of the IDOC staff resumed as early as 7 a.m. and then the next in line in reporting were the old people and the elderly, and that was for us very impressive. And then the other observation we had was that in most of the polling units, priority lines were created for those with special needs, the elderly, the nursing mothers, the expectant mothers, and persons with disability. Although that didn't work in some places because some electorates thought that they were there before these special people, and so should be given priority rather than creating those priority lines. And in one particular polling station, the security man, it's what's mentioning. This example is not mentioning because the police officer actually gave priority to a nursing father. So and he said to us, the voter education, the sensitization we're getting from all parties involved in the process has made us realize that we need to take cognizance of those with special needs. For us, that was a very useful behavior which needs to be commended. Before the election, we observed that materials were deployed timely, in a very timely manner by INEC. So kudos to INEC on that. And then there were some rumors about security officers about fracas, and so we went to town and also gleaned information from our observers and saw that it was just a mere rumor, and security personnel at the polling stations, most of them that we noticed were not with arms. We only had a show of force a day before the election, and the military officers were at checkpoints and at the fringes, not at the polling stations, and voters were not intimidated. There was a good turnout of voters despite the inclement weather in some places. That for us was very useful as well. Apart from a few places where citizens observed that there was this concept of pardon my Yoruba, Dabosebe. According to those who interpreted it for me, it was vote and cook soup. Otherwise, most observers reported to us that voting went on peacefully.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's move back to, arms-free Janako. I'm interested in one thing you've mentioned, one of the initiatives, and I want to juxtapose that with what Ahmed Sadio earlier said, talking about results real time then, and having been broadcast directly. And of course, on the other side, you mentioned the creation or establishment of fake news hub by the CDD. Now, what really came out of that fake news hub, in spite of the fact that these results have been given out real time, especially by some media outfits?
Yes, so the work we did on fake news really started from the pre-election period, because when we tried to intervene in the in ensuring that the fake news does not undermine voter confidence, what we do essentially is to try and locate the fake news. Where is it spreading? Where is it trending? And you have the fake news that trends on social media. For example, on election day, there was this trending news on social media that the SDP candidate had written a letter withdrawing from the race, and he had endorsed the PDP candidate. Our fake news team quickly reached out to the SDP candidate, and we found out to be false. He had not withdrawn, and so we quickly did a fact check and disseminated that widely across the board. But even beyond social media, on the ground on election day, there were also various hoaxes, rumors, people making claims, and we also know that word of mouth on the ground has a lot of impact. And so what we quickly do is, when we hear of anything like that, maybe allegations that security agencies are carrying out activities that are untoward for the electoral process, we quickly call our observers on the ground and get the feedback from them, and as soon as they tell us this is not true, we quickly also circulate that to let the public know. So we should look at the intentions of people who spread fake news. Their intention is to depress the vote in some areas. The intention is also to undermine voter confidence, so that probably the voters don't come out in certain areas they consider to be weak points for them. But the essence of the fake news work we did in this election was really to ensure that we are on top of the game, we are ahead of the fake news peddlers, and we ensure that the material they put out there does not become the acceptable reality in terms of how the election is playing out. Also talking about the results were really very helpful. Our observer data showed that as at 6 p.m. on election day, 99.7% of the polling units we observed had uploaded their results to the IREV, the INEC result viewing portal, and that was very, very helpful for us, because one other aspect of fake news is people also spread fake results. So the fake news hub was also able to tap from that treasure trove of data on the results, and use that to be able to fact check any claims that came on social media. So by and large, it was a really very effective work we did in terms of ensuring that we are able to fact check information around going around on election day.
All right, thank you, Ansfree. Back to Rotimi Oyekome. I would like us to have some clarity with regard to the percentages that we're talking about relating to voter turnout. Ansfree earlier talked about around about 10% of voter turnout in Anambra. Well, circumstances of Anambra elections in November last year aren't exactly the same as you have in Ekiti. We all know, of course, unknown gunmen and a great deal of insecurity in and around Anambra. But here in Ekiti, we're talking about a near 37% voter turnout. My question is, how is this percentage calculated? Is it calculated in relation to the number of registered voters, or in relation to the number of persons who registered and collected their PVCs. Because if you relate it to the number of registered voters, probably get that. But those who collected their PVCs, I think it might look a bit higher, because there were all kinds of, now it would seem to be exaggerated reports on voting day, suggesting that there was a large voter turnout. If there was a large voter turnout and the number is 37%, what makes that large?
Well, there are about 988,000 registered voters, and 76% of them collected the permanent voters card. And yet, at the end of voting, those who actually voted, the percentage is taken against the actual number of registered voters in that area. So when you look at those who voted and you take the total number of registered voters, then you can take the figure and establish exactly the percentage that came out. And I think that for us it's a bit disappointing, because when you have about 75-76% of voters collecting their PVCs, one will have expected at least 50% turnout or more. So that's another thing we need to interrogate. We need to find out what really happened. Is it that people didn't know their polling units, or is it that they couldn't get their polling units in good time, or something like that? So we are going to look at all the field reports and then consult further on this, because to us, the more people participate in elections, the better for democracy. It's about democracy is about numbers, about participation.
I was just wondering again, what is a more realistic figure? I would not be entitled to vote if I have not collected my PVC. So persons may have registered. All kinds of things could have happened. Either they have relocated, they have traveled, some may have passed away, and so on and so forth. So I'm wondering whether the more realistic figure of voter turnout should be calculated against the actual number of PVCs collected.
Well,
what do you think?
This is the thing. You have registered voters in the register. You can't touch that figure. Now, of course, you also have the number of those that collected the PVCs. But you cannot calculate turnout based on those who collected their PVCs alone. Because where will you put the other figures in the register of voters? So the figures won't be accurate. So those who voted, you need to calculate in terms of the total figure in the register of voters. That's the right way to calculate it. If you take the number of collected PVCs, you are going to leave out a figure and have some kind of error in calculating, because you take the whole picture to be able to get that. It's a different thing if you have, as prescribed in the Electoral Act, in terms of the result declaration, or if there's a dispute and all of that. But for the purposes of turnout, you can't ignore the figure of all registered voters in an area against those who actually turn out, although you have the figure of those who collect the PVC. So what you do is you present the figures and then allow Nigerians to have the full picture of what has happened.
Yes, indeed. The issue of statistics here is very important, and people will be very much interested in knowing the figures, and then that could give some more confidence to the voters as regards the number of voters that have really participated in the election. Now let's move over to Mr. Sajo, who is in Ado Ekiti. Mr. Sajo, there is this issue of a seamless, distribution of materials in spite of how it used to be, and then the technology, being used, the beavers, which according to one of the guests here, takes about maybe 2 to 4 minutes to accredit a voter. Now, you as an observer, you must have gone around these some polling units, I must say, at least on the day of the voting, as early as possible, to observe these things. How true is this, that the viewers accredited between 2 and 4 minutes, and of course materials were there before then, of course, and then the accreditation period? Is that really factual, and indeed with this? have we really moved really further in trying to ensure that there is a quicker means of, getting accredited for faster results to come out in the day?
Well, thank you very much. I think the beavers have taken the electoral process a notch higher. And I must commend INEC for training young people who are very enthusiastic. I went round and I saw situations where young men and young women were going from polling units to polling units, asking questions about even the functioning of the beavers without, in most instances, without waiting for complaints from those units. And where in the situation, different situation rooms, where a question is raised about non-functioning of the beavers, the response is instant, and INEC sends people to go and rectify it. What I realize is that in most cases, the complaints that people make about the beavers is not about the hardware itself. I think it's interaction with the software. A number of the polling unit officials may have some difficulties interacting with the software of the beavers, and so in the process they assume that the beavers are not working and that they complain and somebody is sent. There was even a particular case where somebody told us that if they use the beavers in the shade, it doesn't function. When they go out and where there is light, it functions well. Whether that is true or not, I don't know, but these are some of the things that we do. But the beavers, by and large, function very well. And like I said, what is most important in this election is the deployment of material. The deployment of materials was nearly seamless. The deployment of materials was fast, and it resulted in a very quick commencement of the process. I must also commend what my dear sister there said, that I noticed that in Ekiti, there were special queues for women in most polling units, and there were also special queues for elderly and people with special needs. I think we should carry it further. It's not discrimination, it's an understanding that there are people whose needs are special. There is no point keeping a nursing mother, for example, at the polling unit with a child that is wailing and crying for whatever reason. I think by and large, the process has improved greatly. We're waiting for Osun. We hope to see a much better improvement in Osun. We must commend INEC, we must commend the citizens. I cannot emphasize this less. We must also commend the security agencies.
Abesajo, regardless of the positive comments that have been made with respect to the conduct of the elections and the declaration of a winner, some of the contenders in the election have raised objection to the declaration of a winner. They say that the elections were probably generally free, but not fair. And what's your reaction to this also against the backdrop of what has been reported to be widespread vote buying?
Well, thank you very much. My verdict in terms of free and fair is that the election was to a large extent free and fair. And I think beyond these allegations of vote buying, what really wanted to put spanners in the works for this election was this elevation of fake news to some higher level. Just a day to the elections, or on the day of the morning of the elections, there was a letter that was purportedly written by one of the candidates withdrawing and supporting another candidate. And they did it so skillfully on a printed, headed paper, and then every wording and everything, if you are gullible, will deceive you into believing that it was true. That was a more serious challenge. There were also reports here and there that the court has nullified certain candidates. All of these things had almost affected the elections. But in the case of allegations of vote buying, of course, there were some arrests that were publicized on TV. But what I noticed was that every party was complaining about vote buying by the other party, except the smaller parties that did not make critical showing. The major parties, all of them accused each other of vote buying. In fact, at one point in time, what agents were reporting to different stakeholders was that the party were spending so much money. We need money to counter them. But sometimes, when politicians tell you party A is spending money and we need money to counter them, it's most likely that some major stakeholders or some people on the ground wanted to enrich themselves at the expense of those stakeholders that they were contacting. But by and large, the election was free, fair, and to a large extent very credible. And we should not take the shine off that level of credibility. I'm happy that one of the major candidates had even, congratulated the winner and accepted the situation. I think we must begin to, commend ourselves when we do right. Like I said, an election is a process. It's not the voting that is the election. The electoral process begins from the distribution of materials, training of staff, distribution of materials, right up to announcement of results and the analysis of the results after. So as far as I'm concerned, the electoral process has not even ended until the results are analyzed, until field reports are analyzed properly, and we get a report from INEC based on their field reports and based on all the analysis they would have received from the different observer groups. We would not say the electoral process has ended. But as far as it is at this point, we've reached a threshold where a winner has been declared, and there were no violence, which was key. And if you notice, that part of the reasons why the Anambra election reported a far lower voter turnout than Ekiti was that the apprehension, the fear, the hype of likelihood of violence was higher. In Ekiti, there was this apprehension, but it was not very high. It was by and large controlled to a large extent. And like my brother from INEC told you, there was serious stakeholder cooperation. We noticed that everybody cooperated. The traditional institutions, the government itself, other individuals that were there that had a stake in conducting a peaceful election, did the best they could do to ensure that the election was peaceful. Women groups, like I said, went from door to door, from shop to shop, from house to house, encouraging women to come out and vote and assuring them that it will be peaceful. Because for those of us that come from crisis-prone areas, we know that the major victims of crisis at all times are women. They are either directly affected or they are rendered widows or their children are rendered orphans. And so women are more concerned about the peace of the process because they are the major victims. So all of this, put together, ensure that the election in Ekiti, this 2022, is something we must commend, and we must give ourselves a pat on the back.
You're just running short of saying that it's free, fair, credible, and inclusive. Let's take it up from the area. From the assessment so far, it seems like the election was free indeed, and of course it was to a large extent fair. But how credible can we say it is, given the fact that the vote buying issue has been there and it's in the public domain? It has happened, really, we all accept it did. And this might have really touched on the credibility of this very election, given what you heard, what you saw, and what you got from your people on the field down there. How has this affected the credibility of this very election? That's number one. Number two, how all-inclusive is it? Talking about free, fair, credible and inclusive, election. How all-inclusive is it, given looking at the role of women, people with disabilities, and some other vulnerables in the society?
Yeah. I'll take the number 2 before the number 1.
Go ahead. I know why you do. Why you want to do that.
Well, to some degree, we could say from the turnout, we could say that it was inclusive. But we believe and we have a strong opinion that more work needs to be done, more voter education needs to be put in place. More women, more elderly should be encouraged to come out. And in some places, like I earlier mentioned, where security officials were encouraging electorates to accept those who had special needs to be given priority, electorates were refusing to allow such situations, and it was reported that some expectant mothers went away without voting because they couldn't stand the rigors of standing in the line for a very long period of time. So those are issues that we need to address and build upon. So young people were there in the queue, the elderly were there, expectant mothers. So to some degree, yes. But I think what all stakeholders should do would be to look at the good practices, learn lessons, and see how we can improve on the situation, and how that we can use this information in the showing election, and then the big one coming up soon in 2023. On the aspect of the credibility, well, I think it will be the politicians to decide on how credible the election is, because I think opinions would vary. To us, it was peaceful in many ways. It was fair. People exercised their vote, even though I must mention here for INEC to work on. In some polling units, we had quite a good number of people standing in the line waiting, despite the inclement weather in some places, to vote, while in the newly created units, people were ad hoc staff were actually waiting for electorates to come. So that is one issue that needs to be addressed. Again, when you look at a situation where the EFCC and the IPC are roving around and arresting people in pockets of places, that brings a dent to the situation. Otherwise, with the beavers working seamlessly, people patiently waiting, that could have given this election a very good outing, a very strong rating. But these pockets of situations, which of course the politicians would want to highlight to their advantage, begins to bring the question about the credibility of the process. But from our observation, it's not a large-scale event, because voter inducement was done very covertly. People were very clever. I think they looked at the situation, the process, and sat down and saw how they could circumvent it. From what we observed, and from field reports from observers, people were given tally numbers in some hidden spots. They go vote. And that's, of course, these are targeted persons that were given. And then they come back to some spots, which, of course, we couldn't have access to have the final discussion. But those are allegations. And those are, although the people observed, but could not, in some places, I think they could be substantiated, but I believe that these situations might not, to a certain degree, affect the credibility of the election.
All right. Bakri, thank you very much. We're going to return to this issue of voter inducement and aspects of voter suppression against the backdrop of what happened just only a couple of weeks earlier with the conduct of the various primaries for elective offices ahead of the 2023 elections, including the special national conventions that the various political parties hosted to pick their presidential candidates, and the alleged scandal arising from the distribution of dollars to delegates. I'm sure you've heard that joke being cracked all over the place with regard to being a delegate and then going home a much richer person, because delegates were alleged to have been induced. And here we were just on Saturday, the same tactics of voter inducement and all kinds of tricks, including the ones that you just described. Some reports said that the positioning of the voting cubicles did not guarantee secrecy of the ballot, that you could still do see and buy. So we'll come to that, and I will take the question to Amsri when we return from this short break. All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And I was prefacing my question to Amsri Ajanako before we went on that short break. Amsri, the issue of voter inducement, it may not have been widespread, but let's be realistic. There were video reports of officials of the EFCC storming some locations where persons had bags of money, and then of course they have to explain themselves. There was also an incident involving the civil defense. It was a claim that the civil defense prevented the agent of one of the parties from spending the money. I don't know how much was there. One account said 2 million, another one said 1 million. But see and buy was an issue rampant in the 2018 Ekiti election, and it would appear not to have been different this time around. I'm just wondering, I mean, you're also a media person. How do you contextualize this? Before the elections, we were being told Ekiti voters are sophisticated and so on and so forth, and then all of a sudden, you are hearing stories about the Bonsebe, and that's to say, vote and then cook your soup. How do you contextualize all of this, and the fact that there seems to be almost a willingness to discount the fact that there was voter inducement?
Absolutely, it was quite unfortunate seeing that INEC put in all this effort, other stakeholders did what they had to do to ensure the freeness, fairness, and credibility of the process, and eventually the political actors, as they always do, again found ways to subvert the process through vote buying. So in terms of contextualizing this, I would say for one that the context in which the election happened is a state that gave Nigeria the lexicon called stomach infrastructure. And so coming from that background, which we also flagged in our pre-election statement, we identified risk factors for vote buying. For instance, ASU is on strike. Many university towns in Ekiti, you had students milling around, and also the strike of ASU, for instance, in those university communities grounded the local economy. So even before the election, we had raised fundamental questions that many voters were seeing this election as an opportunity to collect monies, from politicians, to vote. But we don't go on to assess it and look at what the data is telling us. Our data showed 74% of our observers did not report incidents of vote buying from their respective polling units. And even in areas where the vote buying was reported, there were specific local governments like Ado Ekiti, Ido Osi, and Ifelodun. So those are some of the areas. So we wouldn't want the question of vote buying to taint all of the efforts that other stakeholders are putting, and this is why we believe that we should beam the searchlights on the political actors. You already referenced the presidential primaries, where we think most of the candidates in the primaries use dark monies to sway the vote. So if political actors use dark monies in primaries to sway the vote to their own advantage, and it comes to the election itself, it's a natural thing that they would want to do. They want to do the same thing. So what I believe strongly is that we have to step up the campaign and not just do moral suasion on the question of vote buying, but also to celebrate what the EFCC has done, so that going forward we can have both the carrot and stick approach. You persuade people not to sell their vote, or persuade the political actors not to sell vote. But anyone found in the act, found culpable of that anomaly, will be held accountable. I think that is the way we can change behavior, so that we don't also use that to also undermine all the other efforts, all the other parts of the process that have been put in.
Oh, thank you so much, Amswe Ajanako. Let's come back to INEC. CPS, you've heard what you said about Woodbine. We've been talking about this all this while. The FCC was there trying to do its job, and of course the ICPC, and a lot of people, this have this, deterrence factor indeed, of course. But the Electoral Act too has a provision for that, I must say, and of course together with violence. I don't know how much or how weighty, all right, is that very provision on the faulters in this regard, who might have been caught or who really want to be participate in this, and how deterring would the EFCC action be?
Well, before I go into what the Electoral Act says, let me take you back to how this whole thing started. Well, people say that vote buying started way back in the 50s and 60s in various forms. Now, like Mr. Osadolo rightly observed, this one reared its ugly head in the last 2018 Ekiti election. That was when people made so much noise about what happened and reported to INEC, called us, made all forms of allegations. We got all manner of things on social media platform about vote buying. Now, arising from that election, INEC consulted stakeholders. We had Osun election coming after that. And it was at the meeting with the stakeholders that people suggested that one of the things INEC should adopt is, one, don't allow people to go to the polling booths with their cell phones or any photographic equipment. So we adopted that. Then people said, two, we configure the polling booths in such a way that it would be impossible for people to show the ballot paper to the vote buyer. And we complied. So first, we incorporated that into our regulations that nobody is allowed to come into the polling booth with the cell phone, because we discovered that you use the cell phone to snap the ballot paper, and then you can then show the person who's going to give you money. And then we change the position of the ballot box. We put it in the open, and it is not too far from the polling booth. Then we configure the polling booth. And I think in Osun, which happened shortly after Ekiti in 2018, the situation improved. And of course, we saw the noise about people saying that, why should INEC say people should not come to the polling unit area with phones and all that? And we said, no, we didn't say don't come to the polling unit area with your phone. You cannot go into the polling booth with the cell phone. And it's even part of the reason why EFCC was invited to join the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security to help us deal with the matter, because they are the agency, together with the ICPC, that have that power to deal with financial crimes and other miscellaneous offenses at that level. Now, coming to the Electoral Act, I think there are two issues. There is a provision against improper use of the PVC, and then there is bribery. For improper use, if you are found guilty, it's 1 million a fine or 12 months imprisonment.
Improper use.
Yes, improper use of the PVC in terms of, giving your PVC to other people or collecting money, or just, not using it for the purpose.
Just vote buying, actually.
Just vote buying. Yeah. But there's also bribery, which is related. That's 500,000 naira fine or 12 months imprisonment, or both. So I don't know whether that is scary enough for people not to engage in it. But I think for us, enlightenment is the key. Ekiti surprises me, because I have a friend from Ekiti who boasts to me that there is no household you go in Ekiti where you won't have a graduate, and Ekiti has the highest number of professors. So one will expect that for a state where you have a high number of educated people, they will know, they will be well attuned to the fact that vote buying and selling is not right. But we'll continue from our own point to enlighten the public about the dangers of of vote buying. The INEC chairman said it several times, and when we meet with political parties, because they are one of our stakeholders, we tell them that these are the things that you should not engage in. And when we have some discussion, they assure us. But of course, when we get to the field, we then see a different thing. I think that if what EFCC did is, seen to the logical conclusion, and people see that when you engage in this, there's a penalty for it, I think it will be a deterrence for others coming forward, and I think in Osun we will have an improvement.
Well, I just want to go to it, but still on this, the electoral offenses. Vote buying is an electoral offense.
Right.
Disrupting voting is an electoral offense. By way of violence and so on and so forth, plus the ones you already mentioned. And some of the visuals we saw from the Ekiti elections on Saturday, as I said earlier, showed EFCC officials busting various groups that were intent on vote buying. So the question then arises, because you said if this is seen to the logical end, who is going to prosecute? Are you going to leave it to the EFCC to prosecute, or INEC itself is going to prosecute? I think that's very critical. Because your hands are full, no question about that. We don't have an electoral offences tribunal just yet. So what do you envisage in terms of prosecuting these persons who were picked up? And then if it's a question of sentencing them very swiftly, they can be in the camp.
Well, I mentioned something earlier that we have this interagency consultative committee on election security where we meet with these security agencies, and EFCC is one of it, including ICPC. Now, the Electoral Act gives INEC the power to prosecute, but there are two critical things you must do before you prosecute. You must arrest and you must investigate. And I think EFCC is well endowed by law, has the power to do that. But they will carry INEC along. It's the same thing with other electoral offenses that the police will actually make arrests. In 2019, for instance, there were people arrested in certain areas trying to disrupt the election. And the cases are still in court. Again, the judicial process through the normal court is a bit slow. That's why people are advocating for the creation of a special tribunal to try electoral offenses, because there's tendency to get weary or get tired along the way. And again, with respect to 2019, the police will mobilize officers from all over the country. Maybe they take their officers from Zamfara, for instance, or Sokoto to Lagos. And maybe those officers now arrest somebody doing something. In the prosecution of that person, that police officer has to be in court to give yes. So if he is in Zamfara, that means each time the case comes up for hearing, he has to go. So who bears the cost for that? Is it INEC? Is it the federal government? Is it the police? So these are the issues that we need to interrogate. But I think that because we have a platform under which we meet and discuss these things, it will be easier to see this to a logical conclusion, because EFCC, I'm sure, will not let go of that case until they see it. If they see it to the logical, they promise that if they arrest anybody, that person will be prosecuted. So I will work closely with them.
EFCC may be looking at that and then acting accordingly from their point of view. That's from their own rules and regulations. But whatever it is, at least they are not going to go scot-free. We're running short of time. Let's move over to Amos Sajo briefly and then see what justice we can make to this very issue of assistive materials during the Ado Ekiti, governorship election. Ekiti governorship election, that is. Briefly, the people with disabilities or people with challenges, the blind, the deaf, had, their own day. They had their own provisions too. There were supposed to be braille ballot boxes. There were supposed to be assistive materials and things like that. From your observation, what did you observe? Have these issues, these materials been provided adequately, and this class of people, have they really exercised their franchise without any hitch, without any problem?
Well, thank you very much. I think, permit me to also comment on this issue of vote buying. There's a way we can stop vote buying, and that is by connecting the people to the governance process, making governance relevant to the people. One of the reasons why we had a very large turnout of elderly people in Ekiti State, I understand, is because of a program called, two programs called Onje Arugo and Owo Arugo that is targeted at elderly people, specifically. They are supported sometimes on daily basis and sometimes on monthly basis. It excited the elderly people, and they came and they voted and they danced. And those ones who could not have even bought them at the point of voting. It's something they can relate to. So if we can have good governance, if we can have governance that connects people to the process of leadership, I think they would choose the leadership without being induced. Secondly, I want to say that there was no amount of vote buying that could have changed the result in Ifaki, for example, because one of the candidates comes from there, or from Ikogosi, where one of the strong candidates come from, or even from Afon, where one of the candidates came from. So the vote buying thing has its own limitations. But like you said, this process of providing special attention to people with special needs, the elderly, the lactating and nursing mothers, and even expectant mothers, the people with fiscal challenges, whatever the challenges that they have, I think INEC should even take the matter a notch higher by providing in the guidelines now that the certain process should not be delayed at voting centers. If you notice that there were no seats, so people have to queue, and you don't expect people my age to stand in a queue for too long. Our backs will begin to question our standing on this queue. So I think we should institutionalize respect for people with special needs, the elderly, lactating women, the people with fiscal challenges. I think we should institutionalize support for this group of people. And we must also train our security agencies to begin to understand that empathy is key. We need to begin to empathize with ourselves. If somebody comes and the person has some special need, it's not out of place to assist the person, ensure that the person performs this civic duty very, very seamlessly. I believe that if we institutionalize this, we will attract more people within the vulnerable groups who will come out, participate in the electoral process. But by and large, the electoral process should be friendly to the voter, and the voters must be connected with the leadership that eventually becomes the outcome of the electoral process. If the voters cannot connect with the leadership that the electoral process produces, the voters may either decide to decline coming out to vote, in which case we complain of voter apathy, or they come there and insist that let me vote and go and cook my soup, because probably this is the last time I will have any contact with the person I'm going to vote for.
Okay, all right. Ahmed Sajo, thank you very much. You're still referring to the soup stuff. The power situation in the country is terrible at the moment. If you cook that soup by this Saturday, if you have not taken the soup, that soup will go sour, by the way. And then that's the end of it. So back to the studios. Afsuri Ajalako, Ekiti is down, Oshun ahead. What would you like to see?
What we would like to see is this very effective synergy we saw on the field. Like for us, from the point of view of observers, we were able to flag a number of issues, and we were able to draw the attention of INEC. By the way, this takes me back to the question of the beavers. Our observer data showed that within an hour of complaints being made where there were issues, there was response. And so we would like to see this going forward. We know that looking at Oshun, 30 local governments, that's a bigger task compared to 16 local governments we have in Ekiti State. So going forward, we want to see the synergy. We want to see the efficiency that was on display in Ekiti, also in Oshun, and to also be able to take that to the general elections in 2023.
Okay, thank you so much. 30 seconds, Eddie. What do you want?
Yes. I wanted to flag that in this election we saw 2 women in Ekiti, which was at variance with the last election where we didn't have any women candidates going in for that election, which was for us very important. I wish that could happen a lot more across board. But it's important for stakeholders to understand that we need to pay very close attention to persons with disability, because 63% of those who observed from our side mentioned that they visually impaired and those who needed sign languages didn't have that assistance that they needed.
All right, thank you very much, Ere. Rotimi, tell us very briefly, how can the system overcome the question of uncollected PVCs? You have 900 and something thousand registering in Ekiti, for instance, 700 and something thousand collecting their PVC, various of 200,000. Is it that we're still having ghost registration?
No, ahead anyway. Well, yes. I think public enlightenment is the way to go. And there's something we have developed, and that is to send emails for those who provided emails. Actually, the current CBR that started last year, we collected phone numbers and email addresses, and when the PVCs are ready, we ask them to come on. So we're going to continue to make use of technology and public enlightenment to get people to come and collect their PVCs.
Thank you so much, Rotimi Oyekami. Rotimi Oyekami is the Chief Press Secretary to INEC Chairman. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation this morning.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Ansfru Onomo Ajanako, the media team lead, CDD Election Analysis Center. It's a pleasure being part of the discussion. Thank you so much. And same goes to Ere Amakwe, Program Director, Gender and Election Watch Room of the Nigerian Women Trust Fund. Thank you very much. A very big thank you also to Ahmed Sadio out there for being part of the discussion. He has been speaking to us via Zoom from Ado Kitchen. Thank you so much. Up next is Sports on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. As always, we appreciate your tuning in. The program returns tomorrow same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Once again, take care of yourselves. I'm Kingston. Let's have a look.
And I'm Yusuf Badabo. Thank you. Have a good day.